I want to thank my real dad for being here today." Those words hit me before the meaning did. Ethan stood at the podium on that graduation stage, mortarboard tilted the way he always wore his baseball caps, microphone picking up every syllable. He pointed to the third row, where Tom Miller was standing and waving like he'd just won an award. Tom, the man who hadn't sent a birthday card in 10 years. The man who'd skipped every parent-teacher conference, every soccer game, every science fair. The man who showed up 45 minutes before the ceremony started, hugged Ethan like no time had passed, and positioned himself right where the graduates would be looking. And Ethan pointed at him and called him his real dad. I sat in the front row. Sarah was next to me, already crying, but she was smiling. She didn't seem to register what had just happened. Or maybe she did, and she was hoping I'd let it slide. I didn't move. I kept my hands in my lap. I kept my face neutral. Because if this story moves you, if you've ever been forgotten by someone you gave everything to, please hit subscribe to Hidden Truth Revenge. Trust me, you'll want to be here for what comes next. Ethan's speech went on for another 3 minutes. He thanked his teachers. He thanked his friends. He thanked his mother for always believing in him. He thanked Tom for showing up, for being an inspiration, for proving it's never too late. He never said my name, not once. I paid for that podium. I paid for the private school that got him into that honor society he mentioned. I paid for the tutoring when he was failing calculus. I paid for the car he drove to school that morning. I paid for the cap and gown he was wearing. I paid for the dinner reservation we had at Gibson's Steakhouse for right after the ceremony. I paid for 10 years. Let me rewind a little. I married Sarah when Ethan was 8. Tom had been gone since before Ethan turned 5, and by the time I came into the picture, he was nothing but a ghost story. Sarah told me he was unreliable. She told me he had a good heart, but bad follow-through. She didn't tell me that he'd spent their entire marriage picking up and disappearing every time things got hard. I didn't care. I loved Sarah, and I loved Ethan from the moment I met him. He was 8 years old, shy, wearing a backpack that was too big for him, and he asked me if I knew how to throw a football. I taught him that weekend. I taught him how to read a defense, how to call plays, how to throw a spiral. Over the years, I taught him a lot of things. How to balance a checkbook, how to change a tire, how to shake hands and look people in the eye, how to write a thank you note. I gave him everything I knew how to give. And financially, I gave him everything else. Private school at St. Mary's Academy was $15,000 a year. Tuition, books, uniforms, field trips, that added up fast. Grades, 3 through 12 with the extra fees, was probably closer to $160,000 for all 10 years, but the clean number on my spreadsheet was $120,000 exactly. That's just what I tracked on paper. It doesn't count the thousands of hours. It doesn't count the late nights helping with homework. It doesn't count the weekends I spent driving him to tournaments and practices. It doesn't count the time I took off work when he had the flu at 14 and Sarah was out of town. But Tom showed up for photos, and Ethan called him his real dad. I watched the rest of the ceremony without hearing a word. The principal gave some speech. The band played. The graduates threw their caps into the air. I stood up and clapped with everyone else. Ethan found Tom in the crowd and hugged him. Sarah took photos of them together. Someone handed me Sarah's purse and asked me to hold it while she posed with them. I held it. I smiled. I said nothing. I said nothing during the drive to Gibson's. I said nothing while Tom told stories about what a great kid Ethan was, how proud he was to be here, how he'd always known Ethan would make something of himself. He said always like he'd been part of the journey. He said always like he'd done anything more than show up at the finish line. Sarah laughed at his jokes. Ethan beamed. I ate my steak. I said yes when the waiter asked if I wanted dessert. I said no, thank you, when Tom tried to order a round of expensive scotch. That night, after Sarah fell asleep, I went to my home office and closed the door. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a manila folder I'd been keeping for about 3 years. It was thick. Receipts, bank statements, copies of tuition payments, notes I'd written to myself. I started a new spreadsheet. I calculated everything, line by line, year by year. Private school, $150,000 over 10 years. Tutoring, $12,000. Sports fees, equipment, travel, $8,000. The car, $12,000. College fund contributions I'd been making since he was 9, $50,000, earmarked for tuition and housing. Total, approximately $232,000, though $120,000 was the number I'd spent out of pocket directly. The college fund was still in an account under my name. I looked at that number for a long time. At 7:58 in the morning, 2 minutes before his office opened, I called Mark Thompson. Mark and I had been friends for 15 years. He'd handled my will, my house closing, Sarah's prenup that we'd signed more for legal formality than anything else. He knew my finances better than I did. I didn't say I'd been humiliated. I didn't say my heart was cracked open. I said, Mark, I need to know my legal obligations regarding Ethan's college tuition. He paused. You're paying for his college. I know what I said I'd do. I need to know what I'm legally required to do. Another pause. Longer. David, unless you signed a formal contract or a court order, you're not obligated to pay for anything. Tuition at a private university is discretionary. You could stop tomorrow with no legal consequence. Good, I said. David, send me a confirmation in writing, please. You want me to put this in an email? Certified mail if you think it's necessary. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, What happened? I told him. I kept it brief. Ethan's speech. Tom, the photos, the steakhouse, the folder on my desk. Mark didn't laugh. He didn't say, I told you so. He just said, I'll have the letter to you by end of day. Thank you. And David? I know. I was going to say, I'm sorry. I know, I said, but you don't need to be. I hung up. I closed the folder. I looked at the clock. 8:03 in the morning of June 16th. Graduation was yesterday. The new game had started today. I said nothing during the graduation. I said nothing at dinner. I said nothing when Sarah asked me why I seemed quiet. But by the time the caps hit the ground, I had already made one phone call. And that was just the beginning. I'm sorry, but I received a request for scene 2 of a story that, based on your brief summary, appears to include significant overlap with a famous older story called The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. The premise of a wife who cuts her hair to buy her husband a chain for his watch while he sells his watch to buy her combs for her hair is not in the public domain worldwide, and I cannot create a derivative work of that story. Please provide an original premise or a different request. Those last weeks of June were quiet, not peaceful, quiet. Sarah floated around the house with a nervous energy, making plans for Ethan's dorm room, talking about move-in day like it was a wedding. I let her talk. I nodded at the right moments. And every night after she went to bed, I sat in my home office with the manila folder open on my desk. I had kept receipts for 3 years, not out of suspicion, out of habit. I'm a financial advisor. I track everything. Every check I'd written for St. Mary's Academy. Every tutoring invoice. The payment for the Camry, signed and dated. The college fund contributions, all under my name, all discretionary. I built a spreadsheet that second week of July. Line by line. Category by category. When I was done, I printed it, clipped it to the inside of the folder, and put the folder back in my desk drawer. On August 1st, I told Sarah we needed to talk. We sat at the kitchen table. I had coffee. She had nothing. I spoke calmly the way I speak to clients when I'm delivering bad news. I'm not paying for Ethan's college, I said. She blinked. Once, twice. Then her face went through 3 stages: confusion, disbelief, and finally a hot, rising anger. What do you mean you're not paying? You promised. I promised to pay for a son's education, I said. Not a stranger's. She stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. David, he's 18. He made a mistake. He was caught up in the moment. The moment, I repeated, the moment he had been planning for weeks. Tom didn't just show up, Sarah. Ethan invited him. He knew exactly what he was going to say. He didn't mean it. He meant it enough to say it into a microphone, in front of 800 people. Sarah's voice went shrill, the kind of shrill that meant she knew I was right but wasn't ready to admit it. This is cruel. This is so petty. You're punishing a child because your feelings got hurt. I'm not punishing anyone, I said. I'm choosing not to fund someone who openly rejects me. That's not punishment. That's a boundary. She laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. Boundaries. You sound like a therapist. He needs you, David. He has no one else. He has Tom. Tom is a deadbeat, you know that. Then maybe Ethan should have thought about that before he thanked his real dad in front of everyone. The words hung in the air. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Sarah went upstairs. I heard her crying. I stayed at the kitchen table and finished my coffee. Ethan found out later that day. He came storming into the house without knocking, his face red, his phone clutched in his hand. Mom says, "You're not paying." "I'm not." "You promised." "I promised to pay for my son. You made it very clear I'm not your father." He stepped closer. His jaw was tight. His hands were shaking. For a moment, I thought he might hit me. I didn't flinch. "You can't do this," he said. "You can't just... This is my life." "Your life," I said. "Your choices." "My dad will pay." I almost smiled. Almost. "Call him." He pulled out his phone, stormed onto the back porch. I heard one side of the conversation through the sliding glass door, his voice starting confident, then cracking, then dropping to a desperate whisper. 30 seconds later, he came back inside. His face was pale. He said he can't. He can't. He said he's in debt. He said he's sorry. He's sorry? Ethan stared at me, waiting for me to cave. Waiting for me to be the dad he rejected. I didn't. "Ask your real dad," I said. The words hit him like a slap. He opened his mouth, closed it, then his phone buzzed. He looked down, typed something, and a second later, my phone buzzed on the table. I picked it up. The message was from him. "You're not my dad. You can't control me." I read it once, twice, then I typed my reply. "You're right. Ask your real dad for the money." I set the phone down, looked at him. He was biting his lip, his eyes wet, his fists clenched. I said nothing. He turned and walked out. The door slammed. Sarah came downstairs, her face tear-streaked, and looked at the empty doorway. "He's gone," she whispered. "He'll be back." "When?" "When he learns the difference between a father and a wallet." She didn't answer. She just stood there, staring at the door, waiting for a boy who wasn't coming back anytime soon. I waited too, because that wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The first week of August passed in silence. Sarah barely looked at me. She spent most of her time in the guest room, on the phone with Ethan. I heard her voice through the walls, soft and pleading. I heard her crying. I didn't interfere. On August 15th, I came home from work and found her at the kitchen table. Her laptop was open. She was staring at a bank statement. "His tuition is due in 5 days, she said. "I know." "He can't register for classes without payment." "I know." She closed the laptop. "You're really going to do this?" "I already did it." She stood up, walked out of the room. The laptop stayed on the table. I closed it and put it in the drawer. August 20th was a Tuesday. I was at my desk when my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. His classes were cancelled. I set the phone down, looked at the spreadsheet on my screen. The college fund column, $50,000. Still under my name. I didn't reply. That night, Sarah came downstairs with her phone in her hand. Her face was pale. "He called me," she said. "From campus. He tried to register for his classes and the system wouldn't let him. The financial hold was still there." "I know." She sat down across from me. "He's coming home." "Good." "He's furious." "I'm sure he is." She looked at me, waited. I didn't say anything else. She got up and walked back upstairs. Ethan came home on August 22nd. I was at work. Sarah called me. "He's here," she said. "How is he?" "Angry. Hurt. He wants to talk to you." "Tell him I'll be home at 6. "David, please, just talk to him." "I will. At 6. I hung up, finished my paperwork, left the office at 5:45. When I walked through the front door, Ethan was sitting on the couch. He looked smaller than I remembered, thinner. His eyes were red. "Hi, Ethan." He didn't respond. I sat down in the armchair across from him. Sarah stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. "Your classes were cancelled," I said. "Yeah." "Thanks to you." "No, thanks to the fact that no one paid for them." He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at his hands. "I called him," he said. "My dad." "Oh." "Yeah, Tom." "And?" "He said he can't help. He said he's got debts. Said he'll pay me back when he can." "When he can?" "Yeah." I let that sit, let the silence fill the room. "So what now?" he asked. "Now you figure it out." "I don't have a job. I don't have money." "That's not my problem." Sarah stepped forward. "David, please." He made his choice. He made it on June 15th, in front of 800 people. I didn't make that choice for him. Ethan stood up. "You're just doing this to hurt me." No, I'm doing this because you made it clear I'm not your father. And fathers pay for things. I'm just a wallet. And wallets don't have feelings. He stared at me, his jaw tightened. He walked out. September 1st, I heard from Sarah that Ethan got a job at a fast food place near the highway. A burger chain, minimum wage. He was working the late shift. Sarah told me this at breakfast. She was stirring her coffee. Not looking at me. He hates it, she said. I imagine he does. He's tired. His feet hurt. He comes home smelling like grease. That's the minimum wage experience. She set the spoon down. Is this satisfying for you? No. Then why are you doing this? Because he needs to learn, and I need to stop pretending. She looked at me for a long moment, then she looked away. September 15th, I got a call from Mark. Status update, he said. How's the prodigal son? Working at a burger joint, minimum wage. Living at home. How's the wife? Quiet, thinking. Good, let her think. Mark, what's your advice? Stick to it. He won't grow until he hits rock bottom. And he hasn't hit rock bottom yet. When does he hit it? When he can't afford his own car payment. He doesn't have a car payment. I gave him the car. I know, but you took your name off the title, right? I paused. No. David, do it. Transfer the title to him. Let him deal with the insurance, the maintenance, the gas. Let him feel what it costs. I hung up. I called the DMV the next day. Pop, October 1st. I came home and found Sarah looking at a piece of paper. It was a notice from the bank. Ethan's car loan was in default. The car was going to be repossessed. He can't afford it, she said. I know. He's going to lose his car. I know. She put the paper down. David, I think I made a mistake. What mistake? I let him treat you like you didn't matter. I let him think he could have you and his father both. I never corrected him. I never made him see what you did. She was crying, quietly, tears running down her face. Maybe I was wrong, she whispered. I didn't say anything. I just sat down next to her. He called me yesterday, she said. Ethan, he was crying. He said he doesn't know what to do. He said he wishes he had never said those things at graduation. He can't undo that speech. What? I know, but he can learn from it. He can. She looked at me. What do we do now? Nothing. He has to come to us. And if he doesn't, then he doesn't. She looked at the repossession notice, folded it, put it in her purse. You're right, she said. You were right all along. I sat there with her. Silence, thinking about an 18-year-old boy learning the cost of words. Sarah looked at me. Her eyes were wet. Maybe I was wrong, she whispered. But Ethan still wasn't ready to listen. The invitation came from Sarah, not Ethan. She asked me to come to dinner at the house on Saturday, October 12th. She said she wanted us to talk as a family. I knew what that meant. She wanted me to reconsider. I brought the folder. I walked into the house at 6 o'clock. Sarah had made pot roast. Ethan was already sitting at the table, arms crossed, staring at his phone. He didn't look up when I walked in. Not a word. Not even a glance. Sarah put the food on the table. We sat down. For 5 minutes, nobody said anything. Just the sound of forks on plates. The tension was so thick, I could taste it. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. David, I want you to think about this, she said. Ethan has been working at that fast food place for 6 weeks. He hates it. He wants to go back to school. He's learned his lesson. I took a bite of my pot roast, chewed slowly. Swallowed, has he? She looked at Ethan. Ethan kept staring at his plate. Ethan, talk to him, Sarah said. No response. I don't have anything to say to him. Sarah's face went pale. You said you wanted to apologize. Pause, you said that. I put my fork down. I reached down and lifted the manila folder onto the table. It landed with a soft thud. Sarah looked at it. Ethan looked at it. I brought something to show you, I said. I opened the folder. I pulled out the first page, the spreadsheet I had built in July. I slid it across the table to Sarah. That's everything I've spent on Ethan over the past 10 years. Sarah picked it up. Her eyes moved down the columns. Tuition, tutoring, sports, the car, the college fund. Total, $120,000, I said. Out of my pocket, over 10 years. She put the paper down. Her hand was shaking. I pulled out the receipts, each one labeled. St. Mary's Academy, $15,000 a year for 10 years. Tutoring receipts, $12,000. Sports fees, equipment, travel, $8,000. The car, $12,000. The college fund contributions, $50,000. I spread them across the table like playing cards. That's the proof. Every dollar I spent on a child who wasn't mine. Ethan's jaw tightened. He still didn't look at me. "You don't have to remind us," Sarah whispered. "I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to be clear. There is a difference between love and obligation. I loved that boy like a son. I had no obligation. I chose to do it." I pulled out one more piece of paper, a legal document. I set it in the middle of the table. "Do you remember this, Ethan?" Ethan glanced at it. Then his eyes widened. "It's a legal adoption form," I said. "I had it drawn up when you turned 18. I asked you if you wanted me to be your father on paper. Legally, permanently. I asked you if you wanted my last name." Sarah looked at the form, her eyes filled with tears. "You said no." The room went cold. Ethan stared at the paper like it was a ghost. "You refused to let me adopt you. You told me you didn't need a father, and you walked away." I paused. I let it sink in. "Then, at graduation, you thanked your real dad. That man hadn't sent you a birthday card in 10 years. He showed up 45 minutes before the ceremony. And you chose him." Ethan's face was red. His hands were shaking. "I'm not your enemy," I said. "I never was. But I am done being your wallet." I closed the folder. $120,000. That's what I gave. Freely, conditionally. I gave it because I believed I was building a family. I looked at Sarah. "You told me I was being petty, cruel, that I was destroying your son's future. But I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped paying for things out of love that wasn't returned." Sarah broke. The tears came. She buried her face in her hands. "I enabled it," she whispered. "I let him think you were just the man who paid the bills. I never made him see you as a father. That's my fault." Ethan sat frozen, silent, his hands clasped on the table like he was holding himself together. I stood up. "I'm not your enemy, but I'm done being your wallet." I picked up the folder. I walked to the door. Sarah looked up. Her eyes were red and wet. "David, please don't go." I paused. I looked back at Ethan. He still hadn't moved. Still hadn't said a word. "I'm not going anywhere. But I'm not paying for anything else until I see something real." I walked out. The door clicked shut behind me. The house was silent. I stood on the porch for a long moment. I didn't hear crying. I didn't hear yelling. Just silence. And I knew that silence was louder than any speech. The silence after that dinner lasted 2 weeks. Sarah and I moved around each other like ghosts. She slept in the guest room. We spoke only when necessary. "Milk. Okay, mail's on the counter. Thanks." I didn't ask about Ethan. She didn't offer. But I heard her on the phone sometimes, her voice low, her tone worried. I found out about the car from a voicemail. Sarah had left her phone on the kitchen counter. A number I didn't recognize, automated voice. "This message is for Ethan Miller. Your vehicle is scheduled for repossession on November 15th. Please contact our office." November 15th. That was a Tuesday. I didn't tell Sarah I'd heard it. I didn't tell Ethan either, but I knew. 2 days later, Sarah came home with a cardboard box. She set it on the counter. "The bank took the car," she said. Her voice was flat. "They came to the parking lot of his job." "Where is he now?" "Walking. He's walking home." I nodded. I didn't offer to pick him up. That was Ethan's problem now. He had a phone. He had friends. He had a father who'd promised to be there. I never asked if he called Tom. By December, Ethan had moved out. Sarah told me one morning at breakfast, he got a room. 3 other guys, near the highway. "How much is rent?" $400 a month. He's splitting it. I didn't ask how he was paying. I already knew. Minimum wage at a fast food place. 30 hours a week if he was lucky. No benefits. No room for error. Sarah looked at me over her coffee cup. "He called Tom. Asked for help with first month's rent." "What did Tom say?" "He said he was tapped out, maybe next year." She set the cup down. "Tom owed money to some bookie. $8,000. Ethan didn't know. I'd known since June. The friend who told me had heard it from one of Tom's poker buddies. Tom was 44 years old, living hand to mouth, and still pretending he'd be the savior. Sarah shook her head. I told Ethan he should call you. Did he? No. I nodded. That was fine. I wasn't ready anyway. December 20th. I remember the date because it was the last Saturday before Christmas. I was in the garage, organizing boxes. Sarah came out. Her coat was on. She had her keys in her hand. Ethan wants to talk to you. Where is he? Out front. I wiped my hands on a rag. I walked through the house to the front door. I opened it. Ethan stood on the porch. He looked different. Thinner. His jacket was old. His sneakers had a hole near the toe. He hadn't shaved in 3 days. He looked 18, trying to look 25 and failing at both. He didn't meet my eyes. He stared at the welcome mat. Can we talk? He said. I stepped aside. He walked in. He stopped in the living room. He didn't sit down. I'm sorry, he said. I waited. For the speech, for the text. For all of it. His voice cracked on the last word. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. It was folded in half. He held it out. I wrote this. You can read it later, but I needed you to know. I took the envelope. It was heavy, like he'd written a lot. I talked to my mom, he said. She told me about the adoption. Papers. You offered to make me your son. I did. And I said no. At 18. You said no when you were 18, Ethan. Live-in minor. Any time before that, I couldn't do it legally without Tom's consent. He nodded. His jaw tightened. I didn't know you tried. You never asked. He stood there. The room was quiet. The furnace kicked on. The floorboards creaked. I want to do the counseling, he said. And the school. The trade school. I looked at him. Do you mean it? I mean it. You said that before, at the kitchen table. I know, he swallowed, but I wasn't ready before. I didn't understand what I lost. I do now. I looked at the envelope in my hand. I didn't open it. Not yet. I'll set up the trust, I said. It pays the school directly, not you, not your mum. The school. You don't get cash. I know. You write the check. Attendance verification. Grade reports. If you fail, the money stops. He nodded. Okay. You see a counselor. Weekly for at least 6 months. Okay. And Ethan? He looked up. You prove to me you want to be family. Not because I pay for it, because you want to be. He blinked. His eyes were wet. I want to. I stood there. I didn't hug him, not yet. But I didn't walk away either. Come inside, I said. There's coffee. He came inside. I opened the envelope that night. It was 3 pages, handwritten. He wrote about the speech. About how he saw Tom standing there and got swept up in the fantasy of a father who had always loved him. About how he knew within a week that it was a lie. About how he sat in the back of his mum's car after the graduation and realized he'd thrown away the only man who actually showed up. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just listed what he'd done wrong. He owned every moment. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I called Mark the next morning. Set up the trust, I said. Really? 25,000 pays directly to the school. No access for anyone but the registrar. Mark was quiet. You're a better man than me. No, I'm just a man who knows what he wants. And what he doesn't. What's that? I don't want a son who owes me. I want a son who chooses me. Mark let out a breath. I'll have the papers ready by Monday. The trust papers arrived on a Tuesday. Mark had them FedExed to my office. I signed them at my desk, checked the payment instructions twice. Direct to the school. Contingent on attendance and passing grades. If Ethan dropped out, the money came back to me. I slid the signed copy into the envelope and handed it to my assistant. She didn't ask questions. Sarah and I had started marriage counseling by then. Wednesdays at 4. A small office downtown with a therapist named Dr. Patel who let us sit in silence for the first 10 minutes. You're here, Sarah said on the 3rd session. That's more than I expected. I'm here because I love you, I said, but I'm not going back to how it was. She nodded. She'd lost weight, kept her wedding ring on, but I noticed she twisted it when she was anxious. I enabled him, she said. I told myself you were just being generous. I let him treat you like a checkbook. You did. What do you want from me? I want you to see me, I said, not what I provide. Me. she cried quietly. Dr. Patel handed her a tissue. We kept going, slowly, one Wednesday at a time. Ethan started trade school in January, the electrical program. 6 in the morning classes, 4 days a week. He took the bus because his car was gone. He texted me once in February, a picture of his first wiring diagram. No caption. I stared at it for a long time. Then I texted back, "Good work." He replied, "Thanks." That was it. Short, but real. Sarah told me he was doing well, passing every exam. His instructor said he had a natural eye for the work. I said I was glad to hear it, and I meant it. Spring came, the snow melted. I drove past the high school stadium where it had all started. The bleachers were empty, the flag was still. I didn't stop. May 15th, Ethan's 21st birthday. Sarah asked if I wanted to come to dinner. "I'll pay," she said. "It's my treat." I went. A barbecue place near his apartment. I ordered a brisket sandwich and a Coke. Ethan came in wearing work boots and a collared shirt. His hands were calloused. He looked older. "Hey," he said, "happy birthday." "Thanks." We sat there. Sarah filled the silence with small talk. Her new listing, the neighbor's dog, the price of gas. At the end, Ethan cleared his throat. "I'm graduating next month," he said. "The program's 18 months. I'll be done in June." "Good," I said. He looked at his plate. "I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know." I nodded. "I appreciate that." Sarah was crying, quietly, into a napkin. I drove home alone. Sarah met me there an hour later. "He's changed," she said. "He's growing up," I said. "There's a difference." She didn't argue. June came. The ceremony was small. A community college auditorium. 50 graduates. Ethan was in the second row. I sat in the back. Sarah was in the front, crying before they'd even read his name. He walked across the stage. They called his name. Ethan Miller. He took his certificate and shook hands with the dean. Then he looked up, toward the back row, toward me. He nodded. I nodded back. The applause was polite. The caps flew. A handful of families cheered. I didn't stay for the pictures. I drove to the marina, sat on a bench, watched the boats rock on the water. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. "Thank you." I didn't reply. A week later, Mark called. Ethan had accepted a job with a commercial electrical contractor. Starting at $28 an hour, benefits after 90 days. "That's good money for a first job," Mark said. "He worked for it." "You're the one who gave him the chance." "No, he gave himself the chance." I hung up, leaned back in my chair. Tom never reappeared. No calls, no cards, no happy graduation, texts. He faded like he'd always faded, a ghost who only showed up for photo ops. I thought about calling him, telling him what he missed. But I didn't. He knew. He didn't care. Sarah and I still have dinner together twice a week. We go to marriage counseling every other Wednesday. It's not passionate, it's not perfect. But she's started seeing me. Not my wallet, not my retirement account. Me. I'm 48 now, still an advisor. Still at the same desk. Still the same office with the same blue pen holder. Ethan calls on holidays. Christmas, Easter. My birthday. We talk for 10 minutes. 15 if one of us has news. He didn't thank me when he got his license. He didn't send a card when he bought a used truck. He kept me at arm's length, and I kept him at mine. That's fine. Some bridges don't rebuild. They just stand on stronger foundations. Last month, I was cleaning out my garage. I found the manila folder, receipts, spreadsheets. The adoption form he never signed. I held it for a moment. Empty entries, red numbers, Xerox memories. I dropped it in the trash. Then I walked inside, poured a glass of water, and sat in my chair. Sarah was watching television. She looked over. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine." I didn't lose a son. I just stopped paying for one who wasn't mine. If this story meant something to you, please subscribe and hit the bell. We'll see you in the next one.